So our story started by looking at movements within the body in terms of breath, and then movements outside the body in terms of mudras, mantras, and yantras. Then we saw how the letters were applied to the heavens and to the earth. Now that we understand the underlying principles, we're able to start to understand how this idea spread. And this lecture, I will talk briefly about what happened in India and Nepal and Pakistan and Bangladesh in modern terms moved first south and then east. But just before doing that, it's useful to look at a map of the world. And on this chart, you see the 10 major language families. Of those, I've left out 2, namely Niger-Congo and Altaic. All the rest are influenced by Sanskrit. So although Sanskrit is usually associated specifically with Indo-European, we see it affects 8 of the 10 languages, and therefore roughly something like 88% of all the world languages. Well, just to remind ourselves, the basics of what we're talking about originated in the Indus Valley, somewhere between 7,000 and 4,000 BC, we think. Then, well, at least by the latest, by 500 BC, which is one of the dates associated with Panini. And it was at the time of Panini that the horizontal placement of the 5 Vargas got changed to a vertical placement of the 7 Vargas. And as we saw in chapter 2, there were various ways of recording this. This is one of them. This is another one, using the Harvard Kyoto method. Well, when we look around the world and look at different alphabets, of course, the shape of the alphabets changes enormously. I mean, the shape of the letters. But here, excuse me, here is the Kannada alphabet, which in terms of the script we wouldn't recognize. But if you look here, K, C, T, T, P, Y, S, and so on, we are completely in line with the Vargas. Or here, this script looks very different, but again, K, T, T, P, Y, S. So Kannada and Old Javanese, although they look completely different, are the same in terms of structure. And that applies equally to Pallava. Well, here, instead of doing 7, we have the first 2 together, so Ka and the K and the C, the T and the TH, the P and the Ya, and then the Sa Varga is on a separate line. The Grantha alphabet goes K, C, T, T, the U, as usual. The Khmer alphabet, again K, C, T, T, P, S, 8. Once we know it, it's just obvious. And the Burmese alphabet, although looking very different, is again the same principle. So once we understand this principle, we see that it's completely the same. And in some cases, such as Thai, we find cases where the actual picture of the mouth that we use for Sanskrit is repeated. And here, in fact, we have the English transliteration, the Sanskrit, and the Thai side by side. And here is another version which helps you see more clearly the Thai letters. Now, just to give you an idea of how widespread this is a list taken from, I think, from Wiki. And this gives you the major languages involved with Northern and Southern Brahmi. And so, just to mention some of them, Mete Mayak Gupta, that gives you Landa and Takri, Siddham, and then you have Siddham, Nagari, Eastern Nagari, Nepali, and then the southern gives you Tamil, Pallava, Old Kawi, Mon, Kalinga, and so on. Now, in the wiki account, you will recall from my introductory lecture that all of this was put under Aramaic, which is totally nonsense, because Aramaic has 22 letters, and how can 22 letters generate 50 letters? Because you have the 32 letters or 33 letters of the consonants, but you also have the 16 or 17 vowels. So this makes absolutely no sense, and therefore we have to see the Sanskrit as a new, as an independent start, and the Aramaic may have, like the Syrian, gone across northern Asia, but it did not serve as the foundation of all of this. But what we do find is that the idea of making grids, and now grids of 25 or 36 or so on, is found here in Brahmi, here in Telugu, here in Gondi, here in Cyrillic, with 49 now, and here with an abbreviated version of English with only 25 letters. So we use grids, as we saw, for making the actual letters, but we also use grids for making the presentation of the finished letters. And then there are various ways of doing the phonology. So here is a way of drawing a phonology chart for the whole of Sanskrit, and here is an English phonology chart. So even there are some parallels. Slightly different is a Japanese phonology chart with 51 letters, and here are letters of Hangul vowels and consonants from Korean, where that whole notion of having one little stick, two little sticks, and so on that we already saw in Brahmi with the vowels, it's like a play on that in a simplified form. When we go further east, we're now in Balinese script. It looks completely different until we see ka, si, ti, ti. Now it's changed slightly because you would expect it to be the ba varga, but so we have ba, pa, ma, wa. But the basic structure is the same. And here's another page of that, and here you see the parallel for Tibetan. And you see again the guttural, the palatal, the retroflex, the dental, and the labial, of which we're completely familiar already with the things. Now there's something very interesting. There is a language called Tagalog. And Tagalog is, you could say, a simplified version of all of this. And here you see the letters, first the vowels, and then ba, ka, and so on. The order is slightly different. Yes, it's more like English. But now you see these funny things that more or less imitate the shape of the mouth. And this creates a new kind of alphabet called Alpha Larawan. And here are 2 pages of that. And there's a different one for men and women, interestingly enough. And here are some alphabets that use this. So the Alibata alphabet, A-L-B-T-A, and Tagalog. Okay? And then here are some other variants, Alibata, Baybayin, Baybayin Sining, and Kata Aksara Lampung. Now, and here is yet another version of Baybayin. And now, just for purposes of clarification, I thought I'll take 3 letters from the Alfa Lara one, so A, Ma, Sa, as in AMSA and as in AMS, and show you that again in a series. So in Alfa Lara one, in Tagalog, in Baybayin, and Alibata, yes? In each case. And then in this version you see variations, yes? But now here is what gets really interesting, because here we're on the east coast of China. Well, that coast that goes from Kamchatka in Russia and Siberia down past Japan to Hong Kong and so on, and past Java and so on. But now here we have the alphabet of the angel Raphael, the alphabet of Adam, and the alphabet of Chaldean, and the alphabet of the Magi. And now just for fun, I put these on the same page. And they're clearly not the same, absolutely. But on the other hand, you would have a great deal of difficulty in convincing me that there is no relationship between these. So this means that although the Christians will claim that, Adam had the first language, or Raphael, somehow this is now in prehistory, so whether this is 10,000 BC or 20,000 BC, I don't know, but there was some kind of Ur language where these symbols and these symbols were connected. And I have seen no discussion of this whatever. But it's, to me, once you see it, it's not the same, but there are parallels. And these, as we know from, as we'll see later when we get to look more closely at the European languages, these are before all the standard Hebrew alphabets and so on. Well, just to make life more interesting, I thought I'd take a Sino-Tibetan Burmese or Lolo-Burmese alphabet, and I invite you to look at this sign, yes, the J. And I ask you to look at that same sign here, where it's a Ya sign. Here we're in Sino-Tibetan. Here we're in Aksara Pahlawi Kawi, so we're in roughly Java, Indonesia. And you can see the parallels in the other Aksaras. But here we are in Indicum, a language that goes to Europe. And you see the Y, pronounced Ha, is exactly the same symbol. So one of the things that needs to be done, and in fact we've been discussing these last days, is that we need to have not just a list of alphabets, but we should be able to trace the history of any letter across all these alphabets. And that would be extremely useful, because nobody that I know has thought of connecting a Tibetan letter with a Javan letter with an Indian letter that goes off to Ethiopia. Well, to show you again some of the strange things that happen as we go eastwards. So here is Brahmi, the Ka Varga, as you would expect, yes? And here is Akshara Kaganga, which sound, well, Akshara is, of course, Akshara, which means, I think, eternal sounds, or something like that in Sanskrit. And Kaganga, I thought, well, very strange, I don't know what that means. And I still don't really know what it means. However, watch this. Ka, ga, ga. So it's Kaganga, but if I'm a Brahmi, yes, I go Ka. Oh, that should be a G. Ka, gang, ga. So I say Ka, I skip the Ka, I say Ga, and I get the Ga. And then I link this one and that one together to create this one. And here you see it in Aksara Rejang, or Surat Ulu, and here you see it in Aksara Rejang. So And we have now again the F, or an F with 2 and an F with 1, yes? And so it is a poor, please forgive me, Indonesians and so on. It's almost like a poor man's Sanskrit. It's an abbreviated version. So instead of giving 5 sounds, I give only 3. But the principle of using a stick and so on is the same. And here, just for fun, I give you some more examples. Aksara Kaganga, Aksara Surut. Well, here I give you the whole alphabet. And when you look closely, the sequence is different. So we would say Yaralava, but here they say Rala Yawa. So they change the sequence of the Yavarga. But once you know that there's a Yavarga involved, whoop, it's clear. Yes? And here's yet a Rejang alphabet to say. But clearly now you're using these strokes as one of the ways of making the letters as well. Well, the Spanish missionaries, when they arrived, and the Portuguese missionaries, when they arrived in the 16th and 17th centuries, they tried to make there was a Don Pedro Alejandro Paterno. He then tried to make a list of all of these. And here's then a way of seeing the comparisons between all those. This could easily be an hour lecture itself. I'm not going to do that. I'm simply showing you that what we think of as maybe one language or one alphabet of this area is actually a sequence of alphabets, and that you can see what happens just with the A by going down this one, i.e. with this one, and so on. So there are all kinds of local variants, just as there are local dialects in India and Nepal and so on. But this is then a first glimmering of how this set of languages comes together, but it's part that, thanks to our story, we realize that this is just a tiny bit of a much, much bigger story. And even when we go to Japan, then we have katakana and hiragana, and when you look closely, it is again, you have the ka varga, then you have the sa varga put there, then the ta varga, and then you have the yara, the ma yara. So only the ma of the pa varga, and then the ya and the ra of the ya varga. So it's just and then you take that across 5 vowels. So, but the underlying principle comes again from India. It's again a Reader's Digest version of a much more complicated system, and that's why it has only 50 sounds rather than the 297 that you have in the Aryabhata. And the Chinese, well, the Chinese are more complicated. They have 214 basic shapes, which break down into 37 kinds of strokes. So their simplest alphabet is 37 vowels, or 37 sounds. But this one has 37 different kinds of strokes, ranging from 1 stroke to begin with, to 2, to 3, to 4, and so on. And then you multiply the 200, sorry, you reverse the 214, and it becomes 412 sounds. And then, there, of course, using these, you can create up to 10,000 basic and as much as 100,000 images, but that would get us into a far bigger story. My purpose this afternoon was simply to take you on a very quick trip with our ship along the coastlines of Asia to show how what starts in the Indian subcontinent ends there. A full story would not talk just about the 10 language families, but potentially as many as 24, and then you would get this kind of picture. Well, that is beyond the scope of this lecture. It's just to get us a first idea of how this fits together. In the next one, we will take the boat and go in the other direction and arrive on the coast of Africa. Thank you.